I always thought a razor was used to make my face look neat and tidy. Now it turns out William of Ockham used it to weed out useless theories. Interesting. Today we will find out how that works. Welcome to the Soft Skill channel. My name is Sebastian Jung and today I'd like to present to you Occam's razor. We start with a simple example. In the morning I come into my garden and I notice that my flower bed is all trampled and the flowers are destroyed. It's an imaginary example because I don't have a garden. Nonetheless, I have three theories. First, the neighbor's kids ran through the flower bed while playing and they trampled the flowers. Second theory, I have an enemy, a personal enemy that I didn't know about, who trampled my flowers to cause me harm. Third theory, I trampled the flowers myself because I am a sleepwalker without knowing it up to now. I don't have any more information, so I can tell which of those theories is right. They all explain the phenomenon, they all explain the situation. However, I can select the one that is most probable with the help of Occam's razor. Occam's razor is a nice and simple tool, a tool for problem solving or a rule of thumb. It can be used to figure out which one of multiple theories, of multiple explanations is the most probable, the most likely one. The idea is, the name razor implies that I cut off or shave off the unlikely theories. The term razor is, in philosophy, also used for similar rules of thumb. Now, what Occam's razor states is this: Entia non sunt multiplicanda sine necessitate. Or, in English, entities should not be multiplied beyond necessity. Or, a bit simplified in understandable English, the simplest explanation is usually the best one. Now, the important question is, what does the simplest exactly mean? The simplest explanation is the one that requires the least number of assumptions. Let's have a look at our previous theories. The idea that a personal enemy trampled my flowers. This requires the assumption that such a personal enemy exists. Or take the sleepwalking theory. This contains the assumption that I am a sleepwalker without knowing it. Now compare this to the theory of the neighbor's kids. The neighbor's kids, they exist. I'm sure I know them. And it is a fact they sometimes play in the garden. And it is quite obvious that kids are sometimes not very careful when playing. So this theory works just with the facts that are already known without requiring any additional assumption. So this is the most probable, the most likely theory of those three. However, this doesn't mean that this theory is proven. I'm still not sure if this theory really applies. There is still no proof. I only know it is the most likely one. So it wouldn't be a good idea to go to the neighbors and say, "Oh, your stupid kids destroyed my nice flower bed." This would be totally inappropriate. However, if I want to further pursue the matter it would be a good idea to visit neighbors and ask if the kids played in the garden the previous day and if maybe they damaged the flowers. And it would not be a very good idea to go to my doctor and say, "Oh, doctor, I think I'm a sleepwalker, we need to run some tests." Why does Occam's razor work? It is a question of probability. Each additional assumption a theory contains makes it less likely. Think of the sleepwalking theory. Here, I assumed that it was myself who trampled the flowers. This might be true or false. Now, obviously, I have no reason to trample on my own flowers, and I can't remember doing so, so this theory relies on the additional assumption that I am a sleepwalker without knowing it, which again can be true or false. And for the theory to work, both need to be true. It would be possible that I am actually a sleepwalker without knowing it, but that I still did not trample my flowers. Only if both are true, the theory can work, the theory can be true as a whole. So, each additional assumption in the theory makes it less likely that all of them are true and makes the theory less likely to apply. And the other way around, if I have only few assumptions in a theory, it is easier to verify it, easier to falsify it, because there are fewer assumptions that I need to check. This is especially important in one special case, because if I made up a theory, if I provided an explanation, and it is proven wrong by others, I can modify my explanation by adding an additional ad hoc assumption to work around this proof. There is a nice example for that on Wikipedia. A man is accused of having broken a vase. Now the man says, no, I didn't break that vase. It was a leprechaun. Now this is difficult to prove wrong, isn't it? Now, however, let's say by chance this room does have a surveillance camera. So I tell the man, look, here on the surveillance tape, it clearly shows you breaking the vase. Now the man says, oh, no, wait. This was the leprechaun as well. He manipulated the footage because he wants to imply me as the culprit. Now, you probably understand how this works. This can go on and on forever. But here are your fingerprints on the pieces of the vase. Yeah, the leprechaun did this as well, again, to imply me, and so on and so on. However, each new ad hoc assumption adds another assumption to the theory, so the theory will mercilessly be cut off by Occam's razor. Occam's razor can be used in a lot of situations, in a lot of contexts. One area where it is especially let's say well known is medicine, because there is a famous quote by one Theodore Woodward who said, "When you hear hoofbeats, think horses, not zebras." And this quote, this statement, he used to explain to his students, his assistant doctors, that when they make diagnosis, they should always focus on common diseases rather than on rare and exotic ones. A concept that is pretty much derived from the idea of Occam's razor is the KISS principle, where KISS stands for keep it simple and stupid. There are some variations of how you spell it out. It is attributed to the engineer Clarence Johnson, and we will probably have a closer look at this principle on this channel in the future. Occam's razor does have its limitations. First of all, as I already mentioned, it does not provide proof. The theory or explanation that I select using Occam's razor is the most likely one, but that doesn't make it true. That is no proof that it really applies. And there is another thing I need to consider. Occam's razor only works if all explanations, all theories explain the phenomenon equally well and to an equal extent. It might make sense to prefer a more complex theory if it explains the phenomenon better or in more detail, or if it explains more phenomenons. For example, the theory of relativity is more complex than classical mechanics. However, it does explain more phenomena, so it is more useful. Another example for that we encountered in Kahneman's book Thinking Fast and Slow, where he described the prospect theory that he developed together with Amos Tversky. The prospect theory is more complex than the earlier expected utility theory, but it does provide explanations for phenomena that cannot be explained by classical utility theory, so it is more useful. Kahneman even emphasizes this in the book. He says that scientists are not easily willing to adopt a new theory, and that they will only do so if the new theory is more useful than the old one, because it covers a wider range of phenomena. At the end, let me say a few words about the origin of the concept. William of Ockham was a medieval philosopher and theologian. He was born in the late 13th century and died in the middle of the 14th. And he used this principle of the easiest solution that has the fewest assumptions. He did, however, not formulate that Latin phrase I told you earlier that was created by other scholars later. And the basic idea was not originally created by Occam, but it goes back way further, back to Aristotle, who already had the idea that nature usually chooses the easiest solution. So the basic idea is way older than Occam, but Occam is the one associated with this principle, and that's where it got its name from. Apart from Occam's razor, it is also called the principle of parsimony, or in Latin, the lex parsimoniae. Now, we better not overdo it with parsimony. I hope you are quite generous with likes for the video, and I would also be quite happy if you subscribe to the channel. We will see each other again next week when we do the book review of How We Learn by Stanislas Dehaene. For today, I'll take my leave. Have a nice day. See you next time.